Nico, hi baby.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing well. You?
How's your life?
Excellent. Summer.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's summer, so
Summer. I love summer. I want it to be summer all the time,
yeah,
like
for real.
all the time. And now I'm like, the heat is getting unbearable, but I'm also like bearing and not complaining.
Yeah, you can't
Like,
complain. We have 9 months of winter. You're not going to start complaining
no.
over
And
30
I'm not going to
degrees.
fight someone to be like, I want it to be colder because I don't. I
No,
really
no, come on.
don't. Have you had a good summer so far? What have you been up to?
I have been busy.
Mm,
I've been in a couple art
yeah,
shows. I've also been like partying a lot.
I know. I feel like it's a good combo. A
Yeah.
little bit of productivity, a little bit of fun. It's
Well, too
been
much fun, I think.
too much fun.
Yeah.
Can there be?
Well, maybe. I
Are
feel
you
like now.
exhausted at this point?
Yes, I feel like now it's post Pride. I'm getting that like exhaustion. So I'm like, now I got to start working again. Fuck.
I know. I'm excited to see what you're going to work on, but I also want to talk a little bit about your show. But obviously, I know you so well, but people don't know who you are. So tell people who you are. Who is
Uh,
Nico? What do you do? What are we doing in the city?
yeah, my name is Nicko Cecchini. I'm a painter.
Hmm.
I do that most of the time for myself, but then I also work for another artist
Yeah,
as an assistant painter. So do that full time.
nice.
The rest of the time, I'm doing my own work.
Yeah, and your work is really impressive. Like I think I followed you because of your work to begin with, and now I've seen obviously like a big growth in what it is you do, which really excites me because
Thank
I
you.
always feel like I love seeing people in the process of their work. It's always like thrilling to me to watch.
Thank you.
So I think that that's really nice. One of the things that I've always been fascinated too is how did you get into this? And I don't think we've ever talked about how you got into painting,
Hmm.
but maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was always really good at art and
Yeah,
painting. When I
yeah,
was a kid, I would like win every like drawing contest.
yeah.
Like at school, I would always like be the star, like in
Hmm.
art class,
Hmm.
if you can be a star in art class. And then I didn't think about it actively as being an artist until early university because I went
Okay.
to school for political science.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
See, I didn't even know this.
yeah. So I was
Yeah.
in it for 2 years, and I was like, "What the fuck am I gonna do with
Hmm.
this?"
Hmm.
And then I had like a crisis of faith, and then I was in a bad relationship, and the way I got out of it was throwing myself into little art projects, and
Nice.
then I was like, "Oh, I could do this like full time." So I
Yeah.
switched my major to fine arts, and then since then it's just been like I've just been like laser focused on
On
working on
this.
making art.
When it comes to like making art on its own, in the process, what is the joy for you?
The joy
Mm.
is there's more frustration
Than
than
joy.
joy. I think the joy is transmitting a creative thought. So my
Mm.
mind runs in images, so I can like come up with like 10,000 images a day
Mhm.
to express what I'm feeling or
Mhm.
thinking on like matters.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of harnessing all those ideas,
Yeah.
creating an image that communicates that thought, and then
Mhm.
trying to translate it or transmit it onto the canvas.
Canvas.
And that's where the frustration lies, I find, is that the idea and then getting it
Mhm.
into a physical form,
Mhm.
and that sometimes it gets lost in translation. That's where the
Yeah.
frustration lies.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Like I think like that's one of the hardest parts is kind of like really taking that brain dump and actually saying, I'm actually making an image. Like it looks more achievable in your brain sometimes than it actually is. And
Yeah.
then it's also such a learning process, which I think you can speak to as well, because I feel like there's been a learning on how to do certain things maybe to achieve what it is that you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you actively currently like go about like learning from your work?
In terms of like getting from the idea to the actual
Mm.
thing, I feel like the older you get, the more
Yeah.
experience you have trying to do that, the
Mm.
better you get at it. Like
Mhm.
I find that ideas are, it's so weird because they're clear in your head, but they're more abstract than you realize they are
Right.
until you actually go to transmit it.
Mhm.
So in that process, that's really difficult. But yeah, no, I feel like just once again practice, and like I have the fortune of working for an artist who has really been able to communicate his thoughts clearly, and I'm
Mhm.
learning through him how to do that, like whether it be subject matter or actual like skill in
Right.
terms of like painting,
Yeah.
right? So like how to make like skin glow rather than make it look flat or like
Mhm.
dull.
Mhm.
So all those things, like, and all those things are conspiring together currently. I'm getting better each day.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like that's interesting to me too, because I feel like when it comes to what it is you're painting, the subject matter specifically, for you, it feels like it follows a very particular trend. Does it follow a particular trend in your mind? Or is this something that just coincidentally just happens to be fitting into like,
Trend
trend?
in what sense?
So like when you look at it, there is something that connects all your work,
Mhm.
right? Like when I look at especially the work that you do where there is more portraits or more humanistic elements to it, as opposed to the work that you do with your character Cam. And we're going to talk about Cam a little bit later because I'm very fascinated. But more of the humanistic side of it. Like I feel like you look at people a certain way, and that's been consistent, even
Yeah.
though there's been a growth in what it is you do.
I think the common element throughout everything that I've ever done has been my grappling with like masculinity
Mm-hmm.
and physicality and sexuality.
Yeah.
So there's always kind of like a confluence between like things that I find attractive and things that bother me about men.
Yeah.
So exploring themes of like, once again, like hypermasculinity, branding to inform masculinity,
Yeah.
or to convey something like that. And that's where, once again, you mentioned Cam, like
Yeah.
the character I made, he really came as a way to kind of like create a line throughout that whole thought, throughout my past work up until now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this idea of Cam. I love the character. Those words for me, I think, are the ones that I kind of always, I feel like I attribute more to you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is you, as opposed to some of the work that actually involves people
Yeah.
sometimes. Because I'm like, I think Cam is you in a painting, right? Like I think you're speaking very much through that character. A lot of your references I think are in it, and I think that that's really why I feel like, for me, that's very much like a true authentic statement from you.
Yeah.
When it comes to Cam, who is Cam? What is this? What is the purpose of Cam for you as an artist? And where are we seeing Cam next?
Cam is like a loaded subject matter. Cam was kind of born out of, once again, branding as a signifier of masculinity. So I was exploring, like, prior to his creation, using brands in order to signify whatever we want. Like, so I grew up in a small town, and one of the big logos that straight men wore was Fox Racing.
Yeah.
And they would use that as like almost like a club, you know, in order to like show their boyhood or their masculinity. And I always felt outside of that because I was like kind of feminine, kind of awkward, and I wasn't into racing, but I wanted so badly to like fit into that mold. So then I started thinking about how we utilize brands to tell the world what we want, right? It's like an identity construction. And then I got tired of using brands. I didn't want to speak for certain brands, and I didn't want to attach certain brands to certain people that they didn't necessarily want to be attached to. So then I was like, oh, I should come up with my own concept for a brand. So then I came up with Cam. So he became like a kind of like proverbial mascot for this like world I wanted to explore. So his name is Cam, which stands for Corporate Anthropomorphic Mascot. So it's kind of just like he's like a trickster that works for a fake brand called Apex. And he is supplanted in paintings in order to like kind of comment on the way, once again, we use brands to signify whatever. So yeah, and he's a trickster in that he works for this evil corporation. I like the name Cam because Cam, we're all on Cam. We're all being viewed
all the time.
So I think of like surveillance capitalism, and I think of how companies are insidious in how they extract our data. So Cam is like a proverbial wolf in like sheep's clothing, where he comes in, he looks really friendly, but he's extracting your information and he's stealing and he's spying on you
all the time,
while we're both using him to convey a message.
Some of my favorites are kind of also where he appears in a painting on like almost like product placement. And it's almost like either he's product placement or he's actually there kind of in a more sort of malicious way. Like his presence kind of gives you this sense of malevolence that you're like, okay, I'm uneasy, but I'm also very attracted to what this is.
Because he's like, once again, he's a wolf, but he has like this like goofy smile. And he, like you said, he used to pop him in paintings and backgrounds. So I would like kind of sneak him into places and
Yeah.
kind of create that idea that he is kind of spying on you, and he is like coming in a nefarious way,
Yeah.
very insidiously.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I was like, oh, well then why don't I just like start making actual clothing with
Yeah.
him on it, and
Yeah.
like do this brand where it's like he's coming in and we're like once again just people using him, but then he's also stealing from them without knowing it. In the way that's
I
we're
feel
all
like
doing.
you are very much in. I feel like it's a natural progression for you to offer merch based on Cam.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Cam is merch.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think like that just feels very much on the nose. Like I feel like it's very much speaking to what Cam is.
Yeah.
Also in a weird way, very true to who he is.
Yeah.
As a character. One of the other things I also find in your work is that there is always a sense of hypersexuality. Sexuality is really important to you. Can you talk a little bit about what sexuality means for you, why it's always so prevalent in your work, and the importance of having it be so prevalent in your work?
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like I am a horny person.
Yeah.
Like generally. But I also like struggle in a lot of ways with my sexuality. In terms of like, well, in the same way that we all do, I think, like body issues, not feeling good enough. I think in the gay community, especially, like our importance that we put on physicality.
Yeah.
And like, by all means, I feel like I have a decent body, but I feel like it's always evading me.
Yeah.
The body that I want to have, you know, that like, it's always on an echelon that feels unreachable. And I think that's a common shared thing throughout the gay community and humanity as a whole. So it's a lot of like commenting on that. So I'll paint really like beautiful men, and I'm both obviously adoring them and like they're men that are in my life. Yeah. But then I'm also commenting on that like unreachability of what that is and how, and relating it to, once again, branding, and that like that's what all advertisement is. It's like, look what you could have, you know, and it's always evading you, and that's why it's like, buy this, buy this, buy this. You can get this if you buy this. Yeah. So they're kind of just like feeding each other like this like loop.
And you also, I think, also put an element of sanctity to the whole process of actually displaying your sexuality, because a lot of the work, I think, also directly references a lot of like more, you know, deity styled imagery that we see, things that you maybe would see like in a place of worship. Is that you actually displaying your reverence for this idea of masculinity, or is this you just kind of speaking to us and saying that we should be revering sexuality?
No, I don't. Well, I could see how it could come across as though this is how we should revere. Yeah. For me, in terms of my own purpose of it, is once again like it is to comment on how the reveration that we do towards certain body types. Yeah. So it's a comment on that for me, and it's also a way of me grappling with it. Yeah. But I guess ultimately it doesn't matter what my intention is as to how people are reading it. You know?
Yeah. No, and that's the exciting part about like any form of art, right? Like it's everyone's interpretation of what it is you're trying to put out there, which I feel like brings a lot of the joy and the fun of it. So that's kind of like very relatable.
I also think, sorry not to cut you off, with like these new paintings, painting these men with also like the Cam logo and all that, I feel like eventually the humor will be seen, like the thread of humor will be seen throughout, and like kind of give more context to it. Yeah. Like the world that I have in my brain that I'm expanding upon, I feel like it just needs to play itself out, and then it will make even more sense over time.
But that's what I feel like it is there, right? Like I feel like there is a story here across a lot of it. I think it just has to cumulatively be seen in one go. Yeah. And I think artists always struggle with the fact that like you cannot build context for your work without physically being present and kind of giving people the context. So how do you do that in a painting in one singular dose?
You can't.
And kind of, and that's the struggle, right? Yeah. I was joking with somebody when I go to the museum and I don't actually read artist statements at the bottom of the painting or around. Yeah. Because I'm like, no, because I feel like, who cares? It's not even that. Because I feel like legitimately, I feel like it would annoy me if I put work out there and no one interpreted it the way that I thought, or someone had some sort of like malicious interpretation of what this is, and I was like, Kareem's trying to be whatever, like, you know, vindictive.
That would bother you?
That would bother me, because I feel like then it's like that isn't who I am, right? But that's a me thing. This is not a them
Yeah.
thing. That's a me
That's
thing,
so fascinating
right?
because I work the opposite.
Okay.
Like I am aware how I can be interpreted,
Yeah.
whether like be in
Good or
a good
bad.
light or a bad light.
Yeah.
But to me, like that's up to you.
That's up
And
to
like I
you.
kind of to me it's like a game. Like if you think I'm like this, like whatever, it's like okay.
That's fair. And I think like, you know what, for a lot of people, like it is obvious, but there is a subset of people, right? Like, and I also think because I talk a lot about the fact that art should be accessible to everyone, regardless of what your entry point is. Like there shouldn't be a barrier to appreciating art for what it is.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, you really are opening up your work to so many different perspectives. And then when I come in, I'm going to look at it the way that I've experienced life, right? And so
Exactly.
that's not necessarily what your intent will be, nor is it your experience, or is it going to come out the same way. So I feel like that's the exciting part. I think that's so I get it, but I also feel like at the same time I want to be. It's a very Beyonce thing for me to want to be like my curated, cultured image.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's really not what it is, right?
I think there's some fun in the mystery of what people interpret of you.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
Yeah.
I think so. I also feel like you'll like hearing it. I don't think would actually be positive. I think it'd be hyper detrimental.
Yeah, true.
But that aside, when it comes to what it is that genuinely drives you and motivates you right now, what keeps you wanting to paint?
What keeps me wanting to paint is I have a. It's gonna sound corny.
Yeah.
But I felt like for a long time I was kind of lost in what I wanted to say and how I want to say it, and then I feel like last year I had a kind of a breakthrough moment, just like overnight. Yeah. And since then, I feel like I have a purpose in terms of like communicating this idea and this theory that I have. And I don't know where it's from, the ether, the universe, or whatever, or like some calling, not to be corny. But it has given me a purpose of artistic practice that I've never had before. And I feel like I have to get this out. And I feel like it's a long journey ahead of me in terms of like fully communicating this thing. Yeah. But I have to see it through.
That's fair. And I think like that really, I think for a lot of people will resonate, right? Like I think that is what it is for a lot of artists, is that there is something and it's very inexplicable and you're kind of driven by it. And sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't click. And then you kind of go through these weird dynamics of trying to get to the phases where it's actually clicking so you can actually produce your best work.
Exactly.
But when it comes to what your biggest obstacles are, what are some of the challenges that you've had when it's come to producing your work?
Big obstacles are time, money, resources. So my idea, not to divulge too much in terms of where it will go, but it's like, it's so expansive. Yeah. What I want to do. Yeah. And right now, like once again, working full time for another artist and having a social life and having relationships. Yeah. I just feel like, how do I maintain all of this? You know? So actually I would say time. Time is my biggest obstacle. Yeah. And these paintings, like, they're not done quickly.
No, and that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, they take months. Yeah. So, yeah, you can only put out so many images. And once again, I have a big message to convey, and there needs to be a through line through all of them. And that takes time and
to make
years, you know?
Yeah, because I feel like you're building your multiverse here.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny you say that. Right?
It's true. Yeah. I feel like that is the natural progression for a lot of this, right? Like, I also feel like, to your point, like you cannot give yourself time right now, but you could eventually give yourself time if you actually like.
Yeah. Well, that's the hope that like eventually I get to the point where I could just do this full time by myself. Like right now working for Kent, I'm like, I feel like I'm gaining a lot in terms of like artistic skill. Yeah. So I'm benefiting it a lot in that way, and I'm taking it in, and like I'm learning so much to that studio. But eventually there will be a day where I'm like, oh, I need to fully take the leap and just go for it, you know?
Fair. And if someone was really new to all of this and wanted to get into it, what would you recommend that they would, or where do you recommend that they would start?
Blind confidence.
Blind confidence? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Just a jump?
Yeah, I think so. Because like I said, when I switched my major to fine arts, like I know that's not like it's not an easy route. Nor has it been. Like you're gonna be
it's true.
You're gonna be fucking broke, and you're gonna be like depleted, and your confidence is gonna be shot because you're gonna watch a million other people who may be more deserving, more like not more deserving, but deserving. But then you'll watch artists that you feel like
Yeah.
how did you get there? And sometimes it's just like who they know, money, status, and whatever. But you have to be able to like keep your eyes on your desk and not get lost in comparison.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. It's like you have to be unshakably confident in what you have to do.
Right. And is that something that you continuously like have to remind yourself of as well? Because I feel like you come across very confident, but I know you very well as well.
Yeah.
But I think like when it comes to the work, especially when you're presenting the work, do you ever present in a way that's like, I'm leaving people to question my confidence in what this piece is? Or are you always like, no, I'm very confident in what this is?
I think it ebbs and flows. I think the more time goes on, the more I am fully confident in the work. Because I've learned to look at my work and maybe there's always a better painter. You know, there's always someone that's going to render things like way better than I will.
Yeah.
You know, you look at paintings where you can see every pore.
Yeah.
You know, then I realized like one day I was like, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm only good at what I am doing, and what I believe in myself is what I have to say.
Yeah.
And maybe the skill doesn't match other people, but the message is there, and I believe it in that message. So that gives me that unshakable confidence.
That's fair.
And that's only come later in my life.
Do you feel like with the new work that's been even more the case, especially? Yeah. I feel like there is a confidence in your work. Like I know we don't talk on a daily basis, but when I see it, there is more of like an assurance here. Yeah. In what it is you're showing me.
Yeah, and like I said, that came when I had that epiphany last year.
Yeah.
And I like told my partner, I was just like, oh, this is it. This is like my path. Yeah. And I know that sounds like woo-woo and kind of like...
No, it's true. Like, but you can only come to that realization in time.
Yeah.
You would never have known that like right off the bat.
No. Right? Well, I did. I had the thought, and then like a week later, I was just like guns blazing. I like mapped out everything I'm going to do.
This, yes. Yeah. But after how, like, you did not know this at the start of your career.
No. You like, it's so weird because you're just kind of floating in the ether, and you're making things, and you're like, some ideas are going here and some ideas are going there. And then eventually you realize how they're all coming to a summation where they're all kind of informing each other, coming 100%. To a broader piece.
No, it's very exciting. Like whenever I hear that, I'm always like, the picture begins to make sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like you're picking up fragments as you're going through life, as you're going through the struggle, and then all of a sudden you're just like, wait, this is all solidifying into this. Like I actually have begun to understand the meaning of adversity, and then kind of the combination of it.
Yeah, and I think going back to like telling people that are jumping into artistic practice that you have to just explore everything, every thought that comes to you, any medium, and eventually they will all just like weirdly be stitched together. You don't realize how your brain is exploring things
100%
for a reason, you know?
Yeah. No, I can very much co-sign that, and I feel like it is always an active learning. So I feel like it's continuously growing and evolving into whatever it's going to become.
Yeah.
Are there any pieces that you would want to talk about that maybe you can reference right now?
Well, I mean, not specifically one, but so much as the body of work.
Sure.
So, did you want to get one?
Yeah, do you want to get one?
Yeah.
Okay, do it.
So, I'll use this one.
Do it.
So this was my partner, Leo, as a model. And throughout this body of work, this was like a communal shirt with Cam on it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking once again of the idea of like people buying products to convey who they are, and that really is going to be the thread of my work from now on. Cam as this like insidious figure, being used as a branding tool, but also as a way to sneak into people's lives, and how we become corrupted by the products that we use. Like we get so consumed with what we have and how we show it, rather than just like the humanity in each other,
of what it is.
You know, so it's coming on that physicality, sexuality.
Yeah.
So that'll be like the.
No, I really love it. I also really love that you're constantly including a lot of like queer imagery in your work, which we love. There's so many changes here to your work, Nicko, when I look at it now, like in person.
Yeah.
Especially here in these textures. This is really nice.
Yeah, and these are all like, I wouldn't have been able to paint like this 2 years ago had I not started working for Kent. And I've really learned a huge amount through him.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive.
Thank you.
Awesome. Where can people find you, and what are we doing next?
Next, I am just going to be once again working on this series, expanding upon that. I have a few art shows potentially lined up. I'm still going through a couple details. I'm going to have a few pieces in an auction in August, which people will find out more through my Instagram.
Okay, so people will follow you on your Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram would be where to get me. So it's at Nicko Cecchini.
I really like that. I also like that you're showing more of your work now, which I'm very, very excited about. So people get to see more of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this, and thank you for this insight. I feel like it's a little bit invasive to ask someone to discuss their process, but I feel like you were pretty good about it.
Yeah, so, I was like, blah, blah,
did you have fun?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So cool. I'm excited to see more of Cam. I'm very excited to see more of Cam.
Thanks.
Yeah?